Well, 24 hours have passed since the Sacramento Kings shocked the NBA and their own fans by trading away Tyrese Haliburton to the Indiana Pacers for Domantas Sabonis. Has it settled in yet? Are you aware that Tyrese Haliburton is gone, not only in your mind, but in your heart? Do you like the move now? Are you still upset? Maybe you'll feel all these emotions on today's Locked On Kings podcast, as I'm going to be joined by my colleague and friend, host of the Locked On Pacers podcast, Tony East, joins me on today's episode. I'm going to fill him in on what he's getting in Haliburton and Buddy Hield. He's going to fill us in and answer some questions about Domantas Sabonis, Justin Holiday, and Jeremy Lamb. Some interesting things that he has to say about the partnership of Fox and Sabonis, and the gamble that the Kings are taking, the likelihood of the Kings being able to re-sign Sabonis after the next couple of seasons. Lots of conversation for you. Plus, rumors and reports say the Kings are hanging on to Harrison Barnes. I'll tell you why that's a good thing right here on today's Locked On Kings podcast.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time. Time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all regular season and all off season. If you're looking for in-depth analysis, game-by-game breakdowns, highlights, interviews with local and national experts, full coverage of your Sacramento Kings from January through December, this is the place for you, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. And today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Check out prizepicks.com. Use promo code NBA or go to your app store and download the app today. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I've been a Sacramento sports media member for the last 7 years. This is my 8th season covering Kings basketball, formerly Sacramento Sports Talk Radio, now with ABC 10 News. And if you're looking for my raw reactions to the Kings trading away Tyrese Haliburton, landing multi-time All-Star, two-time All-Star Domantas Sabonis amongst a couple of other players, you can check out yesterday's podcast. And the numbers on yesterday's podcast, both on YouTube and audio downloads wise, have been insane. Thank you so much for the support. No surprise with how just shocked the NBA world was by that move. I'm a bit surprised how negative the general consensus is towards the Sacramento Kings, even though they landed the best player in the deal, who is still young and has multiple years on his contract. Tony and I will discuss that in our conversation coming up. But again, if you want my raw reaction, go and listen to yesterday's podcast. So many comments on that podcast as well. I got way too many emails. I'm trying to read and respond to as many of them as I can. So if you left me an email, left me a comment, I'm doing my best to try and respond to them, read them, at least react to them in some way, shape, or form, as I appreciate you taking the time to write them and react and listen to me. So the least I can do is try and react to you and get in a conversation with you about this. A lot of mixed reviews in Sacramento. The vocal majority, I think, are frustrated and sad to see Tyrese Haliburton go, but there is still plenty of excitement, of course, for Domantas Sabonis to be here in Sacramento. Plus, the Kings played and lost to the Minnesota Timberwolves last night, and they will play in the Timberwolves again tonight. No word yet, although we should find out shortly, at least from the time of this recording, whether or not Domantas Sabonis and the new Kings are going to be playing in that game, and they could certainly use those new Kings in that game. But I got no time for any of that, because my conversation with Tony East is going to dominate the podcast today. I really think you are going to enjoy what he has to say about the pieces coming to Sacramento, give us some interesting insight as his feet are on the ground there in Indiana. He's been covering Sabonis and these other players for multiple games, thousands of minutes, multiple years. So his insight is extremely important. And hopefully the Pacers fans who listen to my thoughts on the Kings pieces that are now going to Indiana either like or don't like what I have to say. Regardless, I hope you enjoy my conversation with Tony. It's a crossover here, Locked On Kings and Locked On Pacers on the Locked On Podcast Network.
Welcome in, everybody. It is Locked On crossover time, as it is so often around the trade deadline. I'm Tony East, the host of Locked On Pacers. I cover the Pacers here in Indy for Forbes and the West Side Community News. And he, as many of you know on the Locked On Kings side, is Matt George. He hosts Locked On Kings and works at ABC 10 in Sacramento. And we are overlapping, talking about the biggest trade that's happened in the NBA so far this deadline season. Sabonis, Holiday, and Lamb to Sacramento. Haliburton, Hield, and Tristan Thompson to Indy, although two of those guys will be in Indy and one maybe not. We'll get to that later. We talked about this individually last night on the Locked On NBA show, if you guys want to listen to it. But Matt, what were your initial reactions and thoughts about this huge trade between two franchises?
I mean, initially I was stunned to see Tyrese Haliburton moved, but the more I thought about it, now that a little over 24 hours have passed, it lets it set in a little bit more of what the Sacramento Kings are trying to do and what they were able to do. Now, the Kings have a tough task ahead of them of making it into the play, and they have or not just into the play, into the playoffs. And you would think a team that's 16 games under 500 shouldn't have any business even talking about the play-in or playoffs, but lo and behold, because the Western Conference is so bad, the Kings are still very much in the race, and they are going for that race by the acquisition of Domantas Sabonis. But because Sabonis is 25, De'Aaron Fox is 24, it also makes sense that these two could work together and be a partnership long-term. At least that's what the Kings are hoping for. That's what the Kings are expecting when you trade away a talent like Tyrese Haliburton. So the initial shock wore off, and I started to realize the Kings essentially traded a non-all-star with a tremendous upside in Tyrese Haliburton for a multi-time all-star. This is the biggest trade in the history of the Sacramento Kings, with the exception of the Chris Webber trade. Like acquiring a multi-time all-star, I don't think that's ever been done in franchise history. So this is a big thing for the Kings. It's a major acquisition. I'm a huge fan of Domantas Sabonis. I've loved him for a long time, like what he can do theoretically in a fit with De'Aaron Fox, but pressures on the two of them right away, Tony, to be able to perform and figure things out quickly, because the Kings can't afford to drop too many more games if they want any chance.
Yeah, I totally get the Kings going for it, especially after a long time not in postseason contention, and being close enough to make it is great. And even if, maybe this year specifically it doesn't work out, next year when you have a full offseason with Fox and Sabonis, you still have at least 2 more years with both. You should, in theory, be able to be better and push for it again for the next 2 seasons, which is what the Kings want to do. And the big appeal for them is, like you said, they're both about the same age, right? So they can grow together. They can be a part of the Kings as they get better from the deal. The Kings definitely get better in the short term. That's something we talked about last night, and that's what they want. They want to be better. They want to be playing a game that matters, that is talked about on networks, that people preview and all that, and isn't just a normal regular season game. And we'll talk about the fit with Sabonis and Fox later, but there's one specific stat I'll point out later that I think they'll fit pretty well together, and I think this does make sense for the Kings in that way. So I get why they did it. And I also get why people are thinking from the 1,000-foot view that the Pacers got way more than anyone thought at the same time. It's a fascinating set of overlapping circumstances.
Yeah, this is one of those rare trades, Tony, that it hits the nail on the head for both sides completely, while also being basically a financially net neutral deal. I mean, like it's pretty rare when you see a player of Domantas Sabonis' status traded away and there's not significant financial relief from the team that is trading him away, especially for a team like the Pacers, who are executing a rebuild. But I think the Pacers just accelerated their rebuild possibly by 1 or 2 seasons just by the acquisition of Tyrese Haliburton. He's that good. He has the potential to be the absolute star of the Indiana Pacers going forward. Of course, there's more pieces that they're going to add to him. I'm not expecting that team to be good right away or even as early as next season, but they got a phenomenal piece in Tyrese, and I applaud them for being able to land a piece that half the league, or over half the league, didn't even know was available. So you talk about a team that's hitting the reset button, trading away a talent like Sabonis to get Haliburton back. That doesn't happen very often. Just look at what James Harden was traded for a couple of seasons ago. Like it does not happen where you trade away that big of a name, a multi-time all-star, and get a player of Tyrese's status in return, which some people might turn that on the Kings and go, what the hell are you doing, Sacramento? And I understand even Kings fans feeling disappointed, frustrated, sad to see a player like Tyrese go with the potential that he has. But the reality is the Kings traded potential for a proven commodity. And Tony, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on how the national perception of this trade has been. And I also would love to hear your explanation of the Indiana perception of this move, because the national narrative that I've seen surrounding this trade is, man, the Indiana Pacers are clear winners here. What the hell are the Sacramento Kings doing? And I understand that initial reaction, but now that 24 hours have passed, you would think people would understand what the Kings are trying to do.
Yeah, so on the Hawks broadcast last night, that's who the Pacers played Tuesday night. Dominique Wilkins is one of the Hawks play-by-play guys on TV, and he was like, what are the Pacers doing? They just traded away Sabonis. He's awesome. I have seen the flip side where that goes away from it, because like you said, most of the national reaction and, people who aren't zoned in on these teams every single day is like, they got Haliburton. That's crazy. And I just think that there's, people really like Haliburton and Sabonis is really good, of course. But I think that, and Nate Duncan's talked about this a lot, an old friend of the podcast network. Like Sabonis was one of the worst All-Stars in the East 2 years in a row. So yes, he is a 2-time All-Star. Yes, he's very good. He's a top 30 player in the NBA, probably a little higher than that. But he's like, it's really hard with his skill set to figure out the way he gets way above that or above that. So the upside with what he's good at isn't there as much as it is with perimeter players and guards in general. Like if you're the best player on your team in the NBA as a big, you got to be like the best in the NBA at something. Like Joel Embiid is the best in the NBA in the post, and with post moves in is a fantastic defender, and Gobert is the best defender in the league, and Jokic is the best at like 10 million things that isn't worth talking about all of them. But Sabonis might be the best screen setter in the league, and he's an elite center. He's again a top 30 player, but he doesn't necessarily have all the bells and whistles that make him so awesome that I think that people think that he is the 2-time All-Star that you think of when you think of young 2-time All-Stars. That's why I think the Kings are getting killed for it, even though he is super talented and was a big part of the reason before the season the Pacers didn't just totally stink after they traded Victor Oladipo in 2020 at the end of 2020. So there's a lot to that, but I also think that on the flip side of that, people just love Haliburton and what he brings. Like I think I saw today, I haven't looked this up myself, so I'm repeating someone else's stat, but he's the only sophomore in NBA history with 14 plus points per game, 7 plus assists per game, and over 40% from three, which are pretty gaudy stat lines for a 21-year-old player. So I think that people just, especially people who aren't really plugged into these teams, can only see the high level view, just don't really get what either guy brings to the court. And that's why it seemed so Pacers heavy in the national narrative.
Yeah, Tyrese has Chris Paul capabilities. And what I mean by that is it's impossible really to compare any guard to Chris Paul, because Chris Paul is arguably one of the greatest point guards, if not the greatest point guard of all time. Actually, there's no argument that he's one of the greatest point guards. The greatest there, that is up for argument. But what I mean by Tyrese has that Chris Paul skill set and Chris Paul potential, he makes his teammates better. Like without really trying. And that's something that the Pacers are going to notice and Pacers fans are going to notice. No matter who is out there with Tyrese, he will make them better. He will get them their looks. Now, Pacers fans might also get frustrated sometimes with the passiveness of Tyrese. He will sometimes pass up a good shot, looking for a great shot when the good shot was a great shot, if you know what I mean. So that might be something that bothers Pacers fans, especially if Tyrese is going to Indiana, where I assume, Tony, they're looking at him as their number one guy as of right now. Now, a lot could happen in the draft. Who knows if the Pacers get a top pick and add a star that then becomes the guy. But I look at Tyrese going to Indiana, and I say, this might be Tyrese's team. Am I right there?
Next year, big possibility. Like the rest of this year, I don't know exactly when he's coming back, but he's been listed questionable the last couple games. Like Brogdon will return. My listeners know that when fully healthy, I think Brogdon is basically as good as Sabonis. He's that good, but he only plays like 50, 60% of the games, and that obviously reduces his value substantially. He's really good. So I think Brogdon will be the guy the rest of this year, but he becomes trade eligible again in the offseason. And given what the Pacers just did the last 3 days, Sabonis out the door, Karis LeVert out the door, a lot of their core is now 25 and younger, and they have 2 first-round picks in the next draft. I don't know if Brogdon's long for Indiana, and it might depend on how he plays. Like if he fits with Haliburton incredibly, then why would they move him? But if he looks like the alpha and they still kind of stink, there's no point of keeping him around. So I would say till the end of this season, Haliburton won't be the number one guy, but next year definitely that will be a factor. Is can he be aggressive enough? Does he know how to pivot in his mind from, I'm not second or even third fiddle on my team anymore. Like I'm the guy with the ball, and he has Duarte to have to kind of work with as well, because Chris Duarte has been pretty special as a rookie for the Pacers this season, and they'll have to grow together and figure that out. Their first game, whenever that happens to be together, will be maybe the most watched Pacers game in the last 2 seasons, because fans had a lot of apathy for a sub 500 team that ran it back. But I'll be curious how they fit together and how he can handle, because Brogdon's not back yet. We might get a glimpse of the future of how he can be as sort of the alpha guy.
Another aspect of the perception of this trade that surprised me is how many people, now not necessarily national media figureheads, although there were some, but more just general NBA fans that looked at this trade and said, wait, the Pacers got Tyrese Haliburton and Buddy Hield. And I want to make sure, because you know this, Tony, you know how loath isn't necessarily the right word, but I was very ready for the Kings to move on from Buddy Hield. I believe the Kings got better just by trading Buddy alone, even if they got a target coupon for the guy. Addition by subtraction, really, with Buddy Hield. Not saying that he can't be effective in Indiana or wherever he ends up. He is very much a great three-point shooter, but he's also extremely streaky and not really good at anything else. I don't need to go into that much further, but I do want to touch on the fact that I'm pretty confident in saying that not only did the Pacers get both Tyrese and Buddy Hield, no, the Kings encouraged the Pacers probably to take Buddy Hield in order to get this deal done, because the Kings have been trying to move on from that contract. Obviously, the money is needed to even things out, but there is a relief in Sacramento for Buddy to no longer be here. And I want to make sure Indiana Pacers fans understand that. And there are already rumors and reports that the Pacers are looking to flip and move on from Buddy Hield, which doesn't surprise me in the slightest. Tony, you and I discussed yesterday that I think Buddy needs to go to a proven team with clear stars where he has a clear established role. And in Indiana, if he can have any claim to being an important piece, he will milk that to the very last drop. And that could spell danger for the Pacers, in my opinion.
I've seen both sides of the Hield reporting, both that they might be looking to move him again, which I would get why. And then Zach Lowe reported they're looking to keep him. The reports this time of year are what they are. You know, it's all kind of leverage plays and stuff. I would get both, so I don't want to get too nitty gritty on that. But I will say this, and we talked about this on Locked On NBA last night, is like Buddy's only kind of redeeming quality in the NBA is his 3-point shot, even though this year it hasn't been there, right? He's at like 37% of a bunch of attempts. The Pacers are terrible at shooting. So in theory, they'll be better because of that. So as Zach Lowe reported, if they do end up keeping him, great, they'll be a better shooting team because of that. But like anyone who watches him knows that, you know, he just quits on a lot of possessions. His defense is atrocious. I mean, one of the worst effort defenders in the NBA when he is not engaged and can't really drive to the rim. He hasn't been finishing around the basket this year at all. He gives you nothing except for shooting. And if he's not shooting well, like against the Pacers this year, I think he was 3 for 11 from deep. I mean, that's just not a helpful player to have on the court, right? So it depends what they want from him, you know, and like you said, his ideal role is definitely like you are playing with Giannis or LeBron or whoever who's taking all the defensive attention and you're wide open all the time. The Pacers don't have anyone like that. So he'll have to create his own tougher threes too, which, again, he's good at that, but that's the only thing he's good at. I think they'll try. I think what's going to happen is they'll end up keeping him through the rest of this season, and Carlisle can say, finally, I have a shooter and see how he fits and stuff. And like Brogdon, he could be on the move again this summer potentially, but I'd get why they'd move him now. But I agree with you more than most of the perception that he is definitely a negative value contract with over 60, maybe 70 actually million left on his deal for the next 3 years.
With some incentives tied in there too. Well, Tony, I have a handful of questions that I want to ask you about this package. I'm sure that you have questions that you want to ask me about the package that the Pacers got in their fit in return. So I'm looking forward to jumping into that, my man. Like I said at the top of the show, today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by Prize Picks. If you're looking for a daily fantasy option for the NBA, you need to try the award-winning app Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. You will love this app, and you'll love how easy it is to make money on this app, how fun it is to make money on this app. The way it works is super easy to play. You pick 2 to 5 players and an over-under on their projections, and you can win up to 10 times on any entry, and it's just you versus the projected numbers. You're not playing anybody else. You versus the house. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. Prize Picks is safe. They offer fast withdrawals. You use the award-winning app on either the App Store or on Google Play, and you get a variety of options. Like I said, you pick a player or two. Let's say you pick De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis, and you pick an over-under of 16.5 points for Fox and 12.5 rebounds for Sabonis. And you pick over-under. If you hit them both, you cash in and you make that money. And so for a limited time, Prize Picks has an exclusive no-brainer of an offer for all Locked On Kings listeners. You can get $50 for free if a player in your first Prize Pick entry scores a single point. That's it. A single point, you get $50 for free. It's super easy to do. Use promo code NBA to cash in on that deal. Again, just a single point and promo code NBA gets you $50 for free.
Let's do it. Let's start with the Kings side. Give me some Sabonis, Holiday, Jeremy Lamb, whoever you want to pick. Give me the question.
Let's start obviously with Domantas Sabonis, and like I said earlier on, the expectation is that Sabonis is going to come to Sacramento, immediately pair with De'Aaron Fox, and for the first time in Fox's career, he's playing with an established star. And I said this, and it's kind of a loose comparison, but stay with me a little bit here. Domantas Sabonis is now what the Kings were hoping Marvin Bagley would be, and I think Domantas Sabonis is way better than what Marvin Bagley could have been, obviously, even if Bagley was a number 2 overall pick. And what I mean by that is that he's a big man for Fox to play off of, which was the dream when the Kings drafted Bagley in 2018. That's the only way that I'm going to compare these two players. But I want to know your thoughts on the fit of Domantas Sabonis, who you've watched for years, game in, game out, watched thousands of minutes of this man play, his fit with a speedy, offensive, attack-minded guard who is working on his perimeter game but likes to get downhill and also get out in transition. Your thoughts on his fit with De'Aaron?
Yeah, I got stats for this because I'm actually excited to watch those two together. So the NBA does play type data. We're like, okay, pick and roll ball handler, spot up shooter, roll man, whatever. So De'Aaron Fox as the pick and roll ball handler, 64.5th percentile in the NBA this year. Domantas Sabonis as the roll man, 83rd 0.1 percentile in the NBA this year. That's based on their points per possession output in those plays. They will fit really well together in those situations because Sabonis sets, like I said in the first, to me at least, and there's a couple other talented guys at this, but he sets the best screens in the NBA. He's very good at the cutting. It's a moving screen, but they're cutting. Their hands aren't on their hips anymore, so the ref's like, I can't call it, or there'll never be a screen in the NBA ever again. He's really good at the wide base, and then he does that, and because he can pass and finish around the rim, especially this year. He's shooting his best 2-point percentage by a mile this season. He's really good as a roll man. And when Lance Stevenson plays with him, and I promise this relates to the Kings, he is even better because Lance is really good at pocket passes. And that's when Sabonis can kind of catch it on the move and make quick decisions. And Fox is pretty good at those pocket passes. And the thing that makes him so threatening is because he's so fast. And I'm speaking for the Kings, which that's your job, but I'm just thinking out loud. Because he's so fast, defenders always kind of hesitate before he does pocket passes because he can just blow by him if they're off-footed and stuff like that. So I think their pick and roll game together will be absolutely deadly. I think Fox and Sabonis will fit together extremely well, doing the most commonly done thing in the NBA, setting one screen, the other guy. Now, neither of them are good outside shooters, and neither of them are like the best defender ever, and Sabonis struggles on that end of the floor because he's slow-footed. Fox is an okay defender. I don't want to rip him too much on that end. So I do have concerns about how they'll defend pick and rolls, but on offense, I have no questions their fit will be exquisite. And any shooters left on the Kings, including Justin Holiday, who got above 38% from deep because he's on fire in 2022. Since the calendar flipped years, he hasn't been missing. He could feast very well off those two guys. Basically any shooter who can play off of their pick and roll will fit very well with Sacramento now. So I think their fit on offense in particular is actually being a little underrated in the discussion of this trade. I think it'll go very well together.
Half-court offense is going to be extremely important for the Kings with this partnership, and we're going to get a glimpse of that right away because De'Aaron Fox has not run an effective half-court offense at any point in his career. Tyrese Haliburton was the only reason why the Kings had a competent half-court offense this season, and even then, it would struggle at times. Tyrese was a floor general. Fox is a scoring, attack-minded guard who has really struggled, but then again, he's never played with a big who sets screens like Sabonis, who rolls like Sabonis. In theory, you could see him fitting with a Rashawn Holmes or a Marvin Bagley, but it hasn't quite translated versus Tyrese played very well with athletic bigs, which is why I could see him and Miles Turner potentially being a nice partnership there. Do you want me to fire off more Kings questions? Do you want to go back and forth with some Pacers questions? What do you want to do here, Tony?
We can go back and forth. Let's do that. Because you just talked about the aggression, and that's something with Haliburton that I want to talk about. 11 and a half shots per game in 34 minutes for a guy of his talent level is pretty low, right? Mm-hmm. What is that like of his own accord? Because you do talk about him being aggressive. That seems like it's in his own thing. Is that something that, a guy like Rick Carlisle instead of Luke Walton or Alvin Gentry, his two coaches? And by the way, having 3 coaches in 2 years in the NBA is tough. Like that's gonna be hard on Haliburton. That's hard on a lot of players. How will that work for him? Is there any way a coach could get in his head to be more aggressive? Because the way he reads the game, it doesn't feel like it to me, but I'm curious what your take on that is.
Tyrese's game is not to be a volume shooter and scorer. Now, when De'Aaron Fox was out, when he was in COVID protocol earlier this season, and also he's been out recently with an ankle injury, Tyrese was stepping up and taking more of a scoring role while still being the facilitator that the Kings need him to be, which was a prop to him that he could show that he could increase one area without dropping off in another. But Tyrese's game has never been to look for his shot. His game has always been to look for his teammates. And Tyrese has admitted to us on multiple occasions here in Sacramento, I've been told to shoot more since high school. He's been told to shoot more actually since AAU. Like, Tyrese has always been told to shoot more and is trying to get better at looking for his shot. But his natural basketball instinct is to look for his teammates first and take the shot that he has available to him if he thinks that it is the best shot available. That is something that I think is going to need to change, especially if he becomes a number one guy in Indiana. But Tyrese also showed this season that he can effectively still be that pass first guy who can give you 20 points, and his 3-point shot translated better in the NBA than anybody thought, especially when it comes to clutch shooting. You want the ball in Tyrese's hands in the fourth quarter of a close game, and if he's shooting, you're expecting it to go in. He gained that reputation very quickly in the NBA.
Yeah, it's crazy looking at his game log and seeing that he has a few games with high shot attempts, but only less than 10 times he's taken above 15 shots, but over 15 times he's taken less than 10. It's like, it seems like almost that maybe he takes too long to get into the game and figure out what he wants to do there. Go ahead.
But there's a note too. He was playing a lot with Buddy Hield, and Buddy Hield took way too many shots, period. And you could argue De'Aaron Fox at times was taking too many shots. So he was also kind of dealing with that a little bit. In Indiana, Buddy's still there with him. But in Indiana, I imagine he'll have more opportunity and expectation to shoot more, which he did when he had that expectation later this season in Sacramento.
Buddy has fewer games than Haliburton this week, taking less than 10 shots. All right, your next question about your return from the Pacers.
Yeah, Domantas Sabonis, another question with him. His fit with Rashawn Holmes, because as of right now, Rashawn is still a King. Now, there are rumors flying and expectations here in Sacramento that come noon tomorrow, February 10th, or today, depending upon when you're listening to this podcast, that Rashawn will be gone. And that's because I don't see how Sabonis and Holmes fit together. If Sabonis struggled with spacing and with his fit alongside Miles Turner, who can space the floor, what is his fit going to look like on both ends with Rashawn Holmes, who is a fan favorite here, a very good bargain contract, someone who I would not like to see go. But at the same time, if the Kings have to choose between Domantas Sabonis and Rashawn Holmes, the decision's already made, obviously. So I'm curious your thoughts on the potential fit between Sabonis and Holmes. Do you think it's something that could work, at least short term, not necessarily long term, but short term for the remainder of the season, if Holmes is still a King on February 11th?
I'll say no right away, and then I'll get into context. Like, Turner played with Sabonis for, they started together for 5 years, which seems insane. 4 years, a long time. And in theory, if you were thinking about two centers that would fit the best possible way together, one of them who's one of the best pick and roll creators in the league and a shooter, that seems like that's the best way to have two centers fit together. And on defense, Turner's one of the best defenders in the NBA, and Sabonis is not good at defending the perimeter. That's where their biggest problem was. But in theory, they were close to as good as you could get of a fit between two bigs. And this year, Carlisle had the Pacers as a positive team with both of them out there. But in general, for years and years and years, didn't work, right? And that's the best case scenario. And Rashawn's got the best floater game in the NBA, or one of, if he's 10 feet away from the basket, it's money. So like that counts as spacing. Like, I think that's an underrated thing, that does make defenders come away from the basket. And he himself is a good screen and roll guy and a good decision maker. So like, they're both smart and talented, and there is an extent where that's enough to fit at some level, but they both can't defend that far from the rim, and they both can't shoot at all. So if they play together a lot, I mean, there's just going to be very clogged lanes, which would hurt the attractive Sabonis Fox pick and roll we just discussed. So I think they're good enough that it wouldn't be like awful. I don't think they'd be like embarrassing or anything. If they couldn't trade Rashawn now, or they realized they could get a better offer in the summer or something, I would get why they hold him. But I think they'd be better if they got better fitting pieces. And for a team that clearly looks like they're trying to make it now, It seems like that's what they should be doing. But I would understand if they waited. I just don't think they will. I don't think they fit well together. That is my answer to your question.
And I think most of us expect that. And the Kings, if they're going to move on from Rashawn, who we believe has some sort of value, they're going to be looking for either a big or a wing that can play defense and help space the floor.
What's that? I see the Hornets. Why are there a bunch of Hornets flying around me all of a sudden?
They've been interested for a while. So, and I know Kings fans wouldn't mind taking a flyer on Kai Jones, or PJ Washington's another name that's been brought up a lot. So we'll have to wait and see what the Kings are able to do with that, because many thought the Kings weren't done after the Sabonis deal. But I mean, you're running out of time to make that move. So if you're going to do it, Monty, do it quick.
My last Kings question is Tristan Thompson really the highlight of this trade? I'm just kidding. He's not.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. The highlight of the
points,
trade.
17 rebounds a night.
Pacers fans and Tristan Thompson have a strange relationship, because there was a time when Miles Turner was close to being traded to Boston, and then Boston signed Tristan Thompson to the MLE that summer. And a lot of Celtics fans are like, he's just as good. This is great. That did not turn out to be accurate. So
was Thompson on the Cavs as a super young player when the Cavs had LeBron, and it was, oh no, that was the Cavs. It wasn't the Cavs. It was the Heat that had LeBron, that had the big rivalry with the Pistons when they had Paul George and Roy Hibbert. So
Pacers,
never mind.
Yes. Yeah.
That's what I meant. Pacers. Excuse me.
Yes, correct. So no, Tristan Thompson was not involved in those series.
Gotcha.
I do not think there's any chance he reports Indiana. My actual question is, like yes, Buddy is what he is. We talked about that already. What makes him his best? What makes him, besides just like, oh, the shots are going in, that with every shooter that's going to be the case. Like what makes him engaged? Caris LeVert just got traded from the Pacers, but there were some games where, like, when he had Bradley Beal as his matchup, Caris LeVert was like rubbing his hands like, yeah, I like defending these kind of guys. There's something for him that clicked with those games. Is there something for Buddy that, maybe there's one of every 10 games where something happens and he is way better? Is there anything like that?
Well, I'll say the two best things about Buddy Hield are, one, he's always available. Always available.
Yes.
The man does not miss games. So that is a huge deal. And number two is, and as much as I was frustrated with Buddy Hield, I will never sell this man short. He is an incredibly hard worker. Now, he spends most of his time working on his shot and nothing else, which is why he's great with his shot and nothing else. Buddy has the capability of going absolute supernova flamethrower. Like, he can, on any given night, take 15 threes and knock down 11 or 12 of them. He has that capability, but the very next night he could take 15 threes and hit 4 of them. And he also is a guy, because he has incentives attached to his contract. There were multiple occasions here in Sacramento, which of course they're a bad team, of him taking reckless shots and clearly stat hunting, not only pissing off the fans and hurting the Kings' chances to win, but pissing off his teammates, to where you would see guys like Mo Harkless on the sidelines telling him to knock it off. And you would see the Kings, quite frankly, stop passing him the ball at times. So there's the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde aspects of Buddy Hield. His three-point shooting is elite, but it can also fade quickly. And the biggest difference between Buddy Hield of a couple seasons ago that got him paid and Buddy Hield now is, a couple seasons ago, Buddy was getting paid by hitting threes in transition and complementing what the Kings were trying to do. The last 2 seasons, Luke Walton and the Kings expected more out of him after he got paid, and they basically enabled him to be a bad volume shooter, and that got the Kings in trouble. But like I said, on any given night, Buddy can get going, and he can be a lot of fun to watch when he is on. Everything that he puts up looks like it's going in.
I've got lazy numbers for you on Buddy Hield, because I don't have enough detailed research yet. But here's my lazy numbers that kind of illustrate exactly what you just said. When he scores 20 or more this season alone, Kings are 9-5 in those games. When he scores less than 10, they're 4-10. So one thing that stands out to me, the number of times he scored more than 20 and less than 10 are the exact same, 14 times, right? And two, the Kings are very much like, oh, well, he just shot so many times and scored less than 10 points. We have almost no chance of winning. So that kind of sells exactly what you're saying perfectly. It's very live and die with him. And Pacers will hope to live, but certainly, again, we have years and years of evidence that there is more die than live with the live and die by the Buddy Hield 3.
Well, and the Kings kind of made their own bed and had to sleep in it too with Buddy, Tony, because they enabled him to become that volume shooter.
Yeah.
And I don't think that Walton at any point used Buddy effectively. Dave Yeager did use Buddy effectively, but Dave and Buddy didn't get along because Dave was a red ass who would get into Buddy when Buddy took a bad shot, even if he made it. There's a famous incident between Yeager and Buddy in Golden State where Buddy took a horrible three early in the shot clock. He made the shot and Yeager chewed him out in front of Kevin Durant, who had a pretty funny reaction to that moment. So like that's just kind of also the Kings' fault. So if Rick Carlisle can find a way to rein that in and find a way for Buddy to be effective, he absolutely can be an impactful player wherever he goes, but you have to rein him in.
You got any more questions about the incoming new Pacers?
Yeah, I got two short and small ones here really quick.
Yeah.
The final one, or one of them is once again about Domantas Sabonis. I wanted to get your thoughts on the gamble that the Kings are taking. They trade away Tyrese Haliburton, who they had contractual control over. Of course, he's still on his rookie deal, plus the restricted rights and bird rights and everything after that, for a player who has 2 more years left on his contract, which is not, so it's not a rental. But if the Kings were to lose Domantas Sabonis to free agency in 2 years, they effectively traded away Tyrese Haliburton for nothing, and that is the risk that they're taking here. I wanted to get your thoughts on his personality, how you think the chances are of him re-signing in Sacramento as best as you could. I mean, that's more getting into his head and his psyche than anything else. Yeah. But just your read on the situation, if you think that's a good gamble or not for the Sacramento Kings, number one. And then just a very short, and you already touched on Justin Holiday a little bit, but a very, very short synopsis on what the Kings are getting in both Holiday and Lamb, and if they can be effective in a playoff push.
Yeah, Sabonis isn't like the most, I can't really describe it. Like, he is kind of reserved. And he spent time in California during the pandemic. You know, we got a few Zooms in with the Pacers between the shutdown and the resuming of the bubble. He was in, I don't remember exactly what city, but he was in California for that. So I think he'll be happy to be a little closer somewhere he's more comfortable. I don't know if it was Sacramento or LA or San Fran or wherever, but you know, I think that he's more of a West Coast guy than a Midwest guy. So that is good. And I think that, you know, if they can be any good, he'll be happy to stay. And I don't see him being a guy who chases market, just of what we know of him. But again, I don't know him personally extremely well or anything like that. I know some things about him, but I don't know everything about him. So, you know, I think there's a chance he would like Sacramento, especially if they're good. He is very much, I like winning, and you can see it on his face after games kind of guy. And that is true for a lot of NBA players, right? Like, winning cures all in a lot of cases. So I get why there's a lot of fears of that for the Kings. He's extension eligible starting this offseason. So, you know, if they could prove it to him pretty quickly that they have some sort of established winning team now, then maybe they could keep him around a lot quicker than you're thinking. But, you know, that obviously requires a lot to fall in Sacramento's way, and he would be taking probably a money hit by doing that. But it's not impossible or anything like that. So I think it's very possible he would stay in Sacramento, and he has some family out west as well. So that is something I'd be curious about. Justin Holiday is, this season he's been a little streaky, but good 3-point shooter, solid team defender, not the best one-on-one defender, but a valuable wing. In the NBA, those are not easy to find. So you know, that'll have value for the Kings. I've always enjoyed covering and talking with him. And there'll be games. It's not like quite like Buddy, because he doesn't shoot more than like 5 to 7 every game, but he'll either go like 5 for 7 or 2 for 7 this season, it feels like, with absolutely no in between, which is exceedingly frustrating for Pacers fans. But he has been a lot better in 2022 and a lot more consistent. He's found a little groove. He's got a lot of dribble packages that don't really do anything. So they're not like turnovers. It's just him dribbling in place. It's very strange. So he's good, and he'll provide positive value to any reserve unit. Like, the Pacers bench was always better when Holiday was with it than when he started or wasn't available, which is very rare, though. That's the other thing. He never misses games. He played 82 or every Pacers game 2 seasons in a row, and then barely missed any time this year, and that was just because of health and safety protocols. Jeremy Lamb might not be in the Kings rotation. He's just not that great at this stage of his career.
Gotcha. Well, one thing's that's going to be interesting to pay attention to. The Kings better make the playoffs before Tyrese leads the Pacers to the playoffs, but Kings fans won't be surprised at all if Indiana finds a way into the postseason before the Kings do. We would not be surprised at all, Tony.
Yeah, there's a chance the Pacers could just turn it right back around and be good next year, depending on how the last month of the season goes. So that wouldn't stun me either, but I think I think that the Pacers feel this way too. You always got to go crawl and then walk and then run in team building. And I think the Pacers recognize that it's going to be crawl walk the next 2 seasons without any running. But if the next month goes awesome with Haliburton and Duarte, maybe their ownership and GMs can decide, you know what? Let's get going. Let's hop on this running.
Well, the Kings have been stuck on crawl and limp, so we'll see what they're able to do. Tony, it's always a pleasure, my guy. Thank you so much.
Of course, and listeners to both shows, I'm about to do a solo segment. I believe Matt is too, so stick around. Lots more Pacers and Kings content coming your way.
Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is also brought to you by Built Bar, the protein bars that taste like a candy bar. This time of year, a lot of people have given up on their New Year's resolutions to get back in shape, to lose weight, to just eat right and feel better. But Built Bar makes those resolutions easy to pick back up or to continue in these dog days of February. And they have new things. Have you tried Built Bar's Puffs? If you haven't, you're missing out on one of Built Bar's best tasting bars. They have so many flavors, but Puffs are the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy, they're not just a protein bar, they're a true treat, and that's what Built Bar does. They build you basically candy snacks that replace those candy bars that are loaded with calories and give you a healthy alternative. Like most Built Bars contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein, compared to 240 calories and 30 grams of sugar, dozens of net carbs in the average candy bar. And most of the bars are covered in 100% chocolate. Go to built.com to try the Puffs, to try these different bars for you. You can pick the flavors that you like or order a mixed box and try a bunch of different flavors. And whatever you order, make sure you use promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your order. Again, that's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off on built.com. Pleasure to speak with Tony. I hope you enjoyed the insight that he brought there. And now, before we wrap up the podcast, I want to talk about the reports and rumors that came out today, mainly from Mark Stein, I believe, was the one to first report this, that the Kings are not really interested in moving on from Harrison Barnes, that they are likely going to be holding on to Harrison Barnes come the end of the deadline at noon tomorrow on Thursday. And I think that is the absolute right move. I think that's a very positive move, because in trading, I talked about this a lot yesterday, in trading for Domantas Sabonis, the Kings are clearly making an effort to go for it. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to make it, and that might not be the right path. In fact, I think, 48 hours ago, I was saying, actually less than that, a little over 24 hours ago, I was saying that was not the right path for the Kings to take. But regardless, that's the path that they've chosen. And in order to optimize that, they need to have a player like Harrison Barnes, who I think fits very, very well with a Fox and Domantas Sabonis combo, especially because at this point in time, Harrison Barnes is the best three-point shooter on this Kings team. Like, if the Kings were to trade away Harrison Barnes on this roster, the next best three-point shooter averages like 32 or 33%. So the Kings need Harrison Barnes for the spacing. Plus, he's an extremely reliable, I know he's streaky, but extremely reliable veteran that plays a position that is historically very difficult for the Kings to fill. You heard Tony East talking a lot about how Justin Holiday can maybe help with floor spacing as well, but I don't trust Justin Holiday to make up for the consistency and just the presence that Harrison Barnes provides on a nightly basis for this Kings team, a presence that's going to be important if the Kings want any chance of not just making the play-in, but making the playoffs themselves, not to mention the experience that HB has. So I think it's a great move for the Kings to hold on to Harrison. He's got one more year left on his deal. There's no reason why the Kings can't try and cash in on a Harrison Barnes trade this upcoming offseason if they really want to, when he only has one more year worth $18 million left on his contract. So I like the short-term play of holding on to Harrison Barnes at this point in time. But if you feel differently, if you think that the Kings could have gotten something really sexy for Harrison Barnes, hey, maybe you're right, but I don't think the Kings are willing to take that chance at this point. But whatever you think about this, I want to hear your thoughts on Harrison Barnes likely remaining a King. Now, I still think there's a very, very high chance that the Kings move on from Richaun Holmes, and I know the Kings are trying to move on from Marvin Bagley, so that I still expect something to happen between now and noon on Thursday. But who knows? Maybe the Kings don't make any more moves and they're kind of stuck like this for the remainder of the season. The roster is still not great, but maybe the addition of Sabonis and Justin Holiday and Jeremy Lamb is enough to finally move the needle for the Kings. We'll have to wait and see, but I want to hear your thoughts on the entire situation at MattGeorgeSack on Twitter. Email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com, or leave your thoughts in the YouTube comment section down below. Really appreciate you taking the time to listen to today's Locked On Kings podcast. Join me for either an emergency podcast later today if something happens, or for our trade deadline podcast happening tomorrow. Plus, Locked On NBA is doing a trade deadline show that begins 2 hours before the trade deadline itself. So if you're on the West Coast, it starts at 10 o'clock and it starts 1 hour before and it goes 1 hour after the deadline itself. So from 11 o'clock Pacific to 1 o'clock Pacific, you should tune in to our live Locked On NBA National Trade Deadline show. I will be a part of that show talking about this deal that the Kings have made and any other deals that they make early on in the show, sometime during the 11 o'clock hour, pretty close to the beginning of the show. So I hope you'll tune in and join me for that. And of course, we will do a trade deadline edition of Locked On Kings tomorrow. So I hope you will tune in for that as well. Appreciate your support. Can't wait to have you join me next time. Until then, my name is Matt George. You have been listening to Locked On Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.